U.S. President Donald Trump and Chairman of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Jong failed to reach a deal on Thursday, abruptly ending their highly promoted summit. Sometimes you have to walk, President Trump told reporters, though he said he hoped that U.S. and DPRK negotiators would keep talking. Trump said Kim had insisted that the U.S. end all economic sanctions on the DPRK before it committed to complete denuclearization, and that broke up the negotiations. Just a few hours before cutting off the talks, Trump had predicted that the two leaders would ultimately have a deal, but said that that doesn't mean we are doing it in one day or in one meeting. Earlier, responding to an American reporter, Kim said he was willing to denuclearize his nation's weapon system. If I'm not willing to do that, he has said, I won't be here right now. But little more than an hour later, the White House announced the summit was ending early. Were we all expecting too much after all the hype of the past few months? Joining me for the discussion is Soojin, a public policy fellow at the Wilson Center, and here in Beijing, Professor Chenghu from the PLA National Defense University. Welcome to The Point. First of all, let's take a look at the gap between the two sides. And during the press conference earlier this afternoon, President Trump responded to a question about the Yongbyon nuclear complex. Let's take a listen to this first.
He would do that, but he wants the sanctions for that. And as you know, there's plenty left after that. And I just felt it wasn't good. Mike and I spent a long time negotiating and talking about it to ourselves. And I felt that that particular, as you know, that facility, while very big, it wasn't enough to do what we were doing.
So let me go to Ms. Park here. My understanding is that President Trump believes that the DPRK side was willing to take out the Yongbyon nuclear complex, but the United States believe that that action is not enough for the U.S. to lift all the sanctions on the DPRK, and that's where the United States decided to walk away from the talks. Is that the correct understanding of President Trump's assessment of the situation? Is that really what happened?
Well, I can't tell if that's what really happened, but it appears that it's been the case based on the press conference President Trump had after the collapse of the talks. It appears that what had been understood widely is that North Korea was willing to close the Yongbyon nuclear facilities, but based on what President Trump said, President Trump asked for more than Yongbyon, especially the undisclosed activities that were taking place. So he said that North Korea was surprised when Washington pointed out these facilities and requested, apparently, those sites to be included. So based on what he said, it seems like North Korea was not willing to go further than Yongbyon at this point.
Professor Chu, is that what you understood what President Trump meant as the gap between the two sides?
I think there are at least the three major gaps between DPRK and the United States. One is denuclearization and the nuclear-free peninsula. So what the DPRK wants is the nuclear-free peninsula, while the United States wants the denuclearization by DPRK unilaterally. At least the administration hope to see this, while in the United States only President Trump talked about the nuclear-free peninsula. Second is the ways of denuclearization of DPRK. DPRK advocates the phased denuclearization, while the United States advocates the denuclearization in the model of Libya. And I think that will lead to the end of Libya. That's the suit of Libya, where it leads to an actual situation, a scenario that Kim Jong-un might die without a place to bury him. That is the experience we have got. The third one is actually the gap between the DPRK and the United States is the ways, or we can say they have got different approaches on the denuclearization and the nuclear-free peninsula. Of course, DPRK wants the gradual lift of the sanctions on that, on DPRK, while the United States would prefer to denuclearize the DPRK first and then lift the sanctions.
Okay, so who is responsible for the breakdown of the talks? According to President Trump, he said that Chairman Kim was willing to give too little and asked too much from the United States. That's why he decided it's not possible for the United States to ink a deal this time, so he walked away. Ms. Park, do you buy that argument?
Well, that is what President Trump has explained from the U.S. point of view, but we have yet to hear from the North Korean point of view, because every story has two sides apparently. But I don't think North Korea has made any public announcements regarding this, the Hanoi summit. So I don't think we can preclude at this point just hearing from one side. But once we have North Korea's side, I think it'll make more sense for us to analyze what might have happened. So at this point, I don't think we can be we can judge just based on one side.
Well, according to what President Trump has said, at least for now, what he said about Yongbyon, what he said when the DPRK heard that the U.S. actually know about the second uranium enrichment plant and that they want that to be on the list as well, that the DPRK side was surprised that the U.S. knew about that, and a list of other things that the U.S. has made. Do you think all of President Trump's argument hold water together?
Well, I don't think I can judge. I can evaluate that at this point. But what is actually surprising to many of the analysts here is that because there were talks between the special representatives, Steve Biegun and Kim Hyok-chol, right up until the two leaders met, of course, the final decision was expected to be made between the two leaders. But I think a lot of the discussions must have been, you know, dealt with and covered by these two special representatives. So I think it's a little more has to be, you know, explained or discovered regarding what exactly happened and why it came to a collapse. But one thing is for sure, that the two sides, President Trump wanted a more comprehensive deal with the so-called the big bites, whereas North Korea appeared to have wanted a more phased, incremental approach.
Okay, you mentioned a very interesting point, because President Trump and Mike Pompeo, together with Chairman Kim and his senior officials, seem to be taking on the jobs of negotiators for this matter, and that's quite unusual, because normally you would have these senior diplomats negotiate a framework at least and wait for the top leaders to come and ink a final deal, maybe just put some finishing touches to the wording, but you would have already agreed on the basic idea. But it seems to me that before coming into this round, they actually didn't really know what the other side was going to put on the table. Professor Chu, does it seem to you that way as well?
I believe that the original practice proved that that is useless, because in the past the U.S. administration functional agencies had a lot of talks with TPRK, and some agreements have been reached, but this did not work. So therefore, President Trump wants to have the summit, and there are two reasons. One is the summit can put the questions on the table directly. Secondly, Trump would try to win the support of the American people in the coming election. He wants to be re-elected through these sort of diplomatic efforts and presenting a good image to the United States citizens.
At this moment, now that the talks have broken down, although U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed that they're optimistic, that things will move forward, that they're going to keep talking, and yet he has asked the President of the Republic of Korea to mediate with the DPRK. So, Ms. Park, how do you see the sustainability of such a model, such a top-down model? Is it possible that more players in this issue will have to be included in the future negotiation process?
Well, because at this point it's very hard to say, but based on what President Trump has said, although the talks fell apart, there is still a prospect of the next summit, because he said, and also Secretary Pompeo, that they remain optimistic. So, and also the fact that President Trump made it very public expression that Washington is willing to ease or lift sanctions based on North Korea's denuclearization measures. I think there is a good chance that the two sides will meet again, albeit maybe it will take some time to figure out how. And President Moon Jae-in of South Korea, his role has become even bigger at this point to mediate and also to find out creative ways to put these two leaders together again. Okay,
during the press conference, a reporter from CGTN asked President Trump about China's role. Here's what he said. Let's listen.
I think China's been a big help, bigger than most people know. On the border, as you know, 93% of the goods coming into North Korea come through China. So there's a great power there. At the same time, I happen to believe that North Korea is calling its own shots. They're not taking orders from anybody. He's a very strong guy, and they're able to do things that are pretty amazing. But 93% still come in from China. China has an influence, and China's been a big help.
So, Professor Chu, let me ask you this last question. Right after the talks, a senior diplomat from the DPRK side immediately debriefed Beijing on what was going on during the talks. How do you look at the role of China here, especially the unknown part to the outside world?
I believe the Deputy Foreign Minister of DPRK is coming to Beijing to tell how the internal stories of the talk there happened in Hanoi. And secondly, this shows that DPRK respects China, very highly respects China. And it shows that China plays a very important role in the process of denuclearization or the establishment of the nuclear-free zone on the Korean Peninsula.
Do you think China will at some point still be involved in the negotiations? Very briefly.
Yeah, I think so, because we have always advocated that there is not even a single mechanism which will be very effective or more effective than the six-party talks.
Okay.
So six-party talk might be the most effective platform for us to address the nuclear issue in DPRK or Peninsula.
Thank you so much to my guests, Soojin Park, a public policy fellow at the Wilson Center, and Professor Chenghu from the PLA National Defense University.